Hello and welcome to another episode of Unfit and Unharmed. I'm, of course, Unfit, and here is today with me my co host and friend Unharmed.
How
Welcome
you guys
once again,
doing?
viewers. Welcome once again from the last episode that we had. If you are new to the podcast, which is its second episode anyway, welcome all, welcome returning viewers, welcome new viewers. We welcome everybody here. And yeah, we're just here to talk about things that, of course, interest today. As usual, and of course, we'll let the conversation go and maybe find some pretty interesting things and views that we have with each other as well. I think that's kind of like the general idea of what happens here because we pick a topic and we just let the conversation go as every other podcast, I believe, do for the most part.
Yep. So, unfit. Do you happen to know what the topic is today?
Yes, I know what the
All right.
topic is today. It's a very interesting
Very,
topic that is intertwined with our fate in this
yep.
world.
With zero consequences, or maybe one or two. Of course,
But you
I would.
know, but I have to
Yeah.
stay tonight in my bedroom because you know how that goes.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's ever watched this series, actually, there's so many different iterations of this series that we're about to mention, and of course, the
Yeah.
series that we want to talk today about is the Fate Zero game, the Fate Zero
If you haven't
shows, and
guessed,
everything Fate Zero.
yeah. I
So
mean, I'm going to
I'm
say
going
this,
to.
and just a disclaimer for everyone, and just sorry before I'm stopping you in the beginning. Just a disclaimer for everyone. We are not super experts, and maybe we should have brought you know who into this.
No,
Maybe we'll do that
no,
into the future.
no.
I know why not. I know why not. Maybe we'll do that into the future. We'll decide to revisit this topic. But the point is, we're doing it for fun. We're not like, following every single thing where it comes to Fate, but we have a little bit of knowledge. We like the series and we just want to talk about it again because there are some things that are interest us essentially to talk about it because of course we sometimes like to rewatch things and things of that nature as well. So I think that's kind of like the general thing of that as like just to put a disclaimer for anybody who just like think, oh no, but they don't know this and they're like mistaking about that. We're not hardcore fans, okay? Just understand that.
We're
I think
definitely
that's
not
fair.
hardcore fans. But I guess I should give a little bit of introduction to Fate, or at least for the sake of the conversation. So, as we all know, Fate is a media franchise that it basically runs by you are a character, you have a certain servant that comes from one of seven classes. It's seven classes, right?
It's seven classes. They did expand on it on, different kind of series that they're also ruler and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But
but
for the basic knowledge
for the
for anybody
basic
who doesn't
understand,
know, yeah, there are seven classes, and they're going as such. You have Saber, you have Archer, you have Lancer, Berserker, Rider, Assassin, and Caster. These are the seven main classes. For anybody who doesn't know, of course, if you don't know, I don't think any of our viewers don't know about this, but just in case, these are the seven classes. We'll talk about those. We may going to expand as well into other things, but to basically understand the series, this is kind of like the core of the thing. Several servants that you have different mages that are fighting each other into kind of like a mage war. I think that's kind of like the main idea if you want to explain this really basically.
basically yes. So so we have a common friend, me and Unfit. We have a common friend who is a little bit more hardcore into the series. Who plays a game like on a weekly basis. Like it's still
I
to this day.
think
Like
that's the Grand Order one that is supposed to be with the Lost Belts and everything, which is
mm,
also kind of like what made the Babylonia anime and all that stuff. That one, the game that
yeah.
related to that, I think that's what he plays.
So I think the original game came out in like what 2006.
I think so, if not before that. Just let me check that.
I think okay. So the way that it goes, the history of the media is the there's a video game that is it's a bit of a choice game that you basically you get to choose different paths, and you usually play as the main character, and in the anime the main character is what's his name, Shiryu, I want to say.
Shiro.
Shiro,
Shiro.
right. Shiro. It's been a
Also,
couple.
the game came out. If you care about it, just sorry to stop you. It came in 2000 in January 30, 2004. So 2 years before the 2006 anime.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's what I thought, because in 2004 the game came out, and then in 2006 the first anime came out. It's coming back to me,
Yes, the
and there
first
have been,
path.
yes, the first anime, which I'm going to say it right now. Spoiler to all the viewers who have not seen it. It's very mid. It's mid to bad. I'd give it like a 4.55, anywhere in that ball range. It wasn't good.
Also, for anybody who's interested and didn't watch the anime, go watch it first, like, one of these, or at least, like, search sources, play the game, something of that nature. If you are new to this and you don't want to get spoilers, because we might go into dive into spoilers. I'm pretty sure we're going to dive into spoilers when it comes to this.
In a podcast that's going to be anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour long, I hope we will go into spoilers.
Otherwise, we have nothing to talk about.
Otherwise, we'd be just talking about Lancer, who kind of sucks. No, I'm kidding. Lancer's great. I really like
No, he's
Lancer.
not. He's not that bad. I love Lancer. Lancer's
No,
great.
I love Lancer, especially in not Stay Night, in Blade Works. He was really good in Blade Works.
Unlimited Blade works, yes.
Blade Works, the second one, the one came out I think in 2013.
Yeah, Unlimited Blade works.
Unlimited Blade Works. Yeah,
Unlimited
yeah,
Blade
yeah.
works, I believe, came out in 2014, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, it's really beside the point. If you're looking to if you're looking to if you think that there's an order to these, there really isn't, because at each iteration of Fate, there is a Grand Carnival. There's Grand Carnival. There is Stay Night, which is the original, I think. There is, of course, Unlimited Blade Works. You don't. There is no real order to these. But I guess the
There
first thing
is
that
an
we
order, but not exactly. Let's just like try to kind of like create a sign of kind of a timeline in the salad, okay? There is a known story timeline to this, okay, from the first Guerrilla War and everything.
sort of.
So we're not going to dive into the history, but like let's just explain the basics and then explain where we're going to go after, because otherwise we're just going to be like talking about this for dancing around the topic.
So the first characters I'd like to speak about is the most vanilla character in the entire franchise of Fate, and that, of course, is King Arthur. Now, if you ever wanted to watch an anime where King Arthur is a cute anime girl, this is anime for you. There's no other way of saying
Yep.
it. So
I mean,
King
it's not
Arthur,
a bad vanilla character, but yeah, I can definitely see why you're saying it's a vanilla character.
it's the most vanilla character in the entire Fate franchise. Come on, every time you say
But
Saber,
are we going to
the
talk about the baseline of the story, or we don't care about that anymore?
you want to go into yeah, let's go into the baseline. Yeah, okay.
So every mage, basically in the world of fate, strives to perfection. And one of the ways to kind of achieve perfection of magecraft, if kind of like I understood the story correctly, is reaching something called the root, which is the root of the tree of magic. I don't really understand specifically if it's like a tree of magic or anything. Just correct me if you know this a little bit better. But like something called the root, which is it's basically trying to kind of like reaching the root of magic, basically. That's kind of like the goal of the high level mages, that kind of like in the lore of fate. And basically that's kind of like what they're trying to do with the kind of story of fate, because basically that's their goal, and in order to do that they need to nourish some kind of like a magical artifact to get there. So they created some kind of a ritual to create something called Heaven's Feel to reach the third magic, which is kind of like in order to get to um, into the root, which is kind of like explained more when you watch the Heaven's Feel movie. But even then, I'm not like a really hardcore, so I don't really remember everything in detail. But the point is, you're trying to reach the root, so they created the third magic kind of like thing in order to get into Heaven's Feel. They basically created the Holy Grail War because of that, which technically started as a ritual rather than a war. So it didn't really start as like, yeah, it started like kind of like a ritual. So it's then kind of didn't really was a war. It was more of an honorable war. So the house that kind of just wins, kind of getting to get to reach the root, but it's not really it's a weird thing. It's very, very much not important to the main story. There were three Grail Wars before the stories, technically the stories that we know, started. So basically, there are three mage houses that are important to this. That are the Tosakas, which are related to one of the main characters, Reen, which we'll talk about her and her father in one of the other wars. The Einsburn, which is related
And her
to,
sister.
yeah, to the homunculus, and the where was technically Kiritsugu Emiya, and the third one, which I forgot the name of it, the Yamat, the I forget what the name of it, the where Shinji is from and all that stuff. Those guys, Mato
Shinji.
clan, Mato clan. I think it's the Mato clan. I think that's the name of the third one.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
So
Just a
these are the three
second.
like big mage families that are like important to the story and try to kind of like reach the root and essentially change in time. And mages also became weaker because they're also kind of imbued themselves with different kind of families and like non-humans and all that stuff. Like Harry Potter, kind of like a thing that half bloods are worse than actual pure bloods and all that jazz. Quite more complex in that nature. And like I said, I'm not trying to prove that I'm like, know the story because you hear it from me. I don't really know everything into big details, but that's kind of like the main thing. And our story basically starts like, the main storyline starts in the fifth Grail War. There is a story before that for the fourth Grail War, which is also an amazing story, which we'll talk about it a little bit more. But like the main
That's
story for,
zero, right?
yeah, the main Fate State Knight and all that stuff is the
Which
fifth Grail
we'll get to,
War.
we'll get around to it.
Yeah.
We'll get around to it.
So fifth Grail War is the basically
All right.
the Shiro story and all that particular stuff. And basically, when this was created, just to say, the story of Fate, the original Fate Stay Night and Unlimited Blade Works and Heaven's Feel and all that stuff, are basically the same game. It's just different routes that the main character essentially chooses depending on the main girl of the story. So each one of these is a different main girl, and that's kind of like how that works for that.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the classes that we have as servants. Now, the first class I'd actually like to talk about is a class that is many times overlooked, not because it's weak, but it's because it's not as flashy, but it's still a very cool class in my opinion, and that would be the Rider class. Now, do you have any thoughts about the Rider class?
Excuse me, are you saying that the Rider class is not represented? Did you see Fate Zero?
It's it's That's not what I said. I said it's not as flashy.
Technically, yes, and technically, no. I would say Alexander the Great will disagree with you about that one.
Okay, fine, fair enough. But in general, from all the from all the people who have done the class of the Rider, it's not like the most
Oh
flashiest.
no!
Like you have
Initially, it's
Medu.
not. It's not the most flashiest, but you realize pretty quickly that writers are not as bad as people make them up to be. Like, yes, they're not like
No, Riders, if done correctly, can easily win.
writers. The entire idea is that they're not related to the three prime classes, basically, and I don't remember the name of them. The royal class, I don't remember the name of them, but there are three classes that are essentially, I'm not saying they're better than the rest, but like they have more martial art control, I guess, in terms of weapons and everything. I think that's the reason why people consider them
Correct.
more powerful, which are Saber, archer, and lancer. And rider is not in that category because they're not as good with weapons. I think they just have in their myth some kind of like riding on a horse or some kind of a vehicle, which is kind of like also the premise of like Fate when it comes to classes and everything. That you need something in your myth that essentially puts you in that class, as well as just in your myth that kind of like push you into certain particular things. So, for example, like I said, in Rider is in the case of like if you righted something like something significant, like in Medusa with Pegasus or with Alexander the Great, like he was a king that basically rode his chariot to war, so that's made a lot of sense. But in the case of, for example, Saber is just like King Arthur with the sword. Lancer, you see the idea. But for example, in the case of Berserker, it's just characters that just supposed to be very, very angry and like, lose control. It's not like just being angry, just losing control and becoming like crazy or things of that nature.
We'll get to those classes.
So there are some particular characters that you don't see it in the main series, but you are here in the gacha games that have more than one class because their story kind of like involve different kind of legends, essentially.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about something else. Not the writer itself, but all the masters of the writers have every single time they've been such a disappointment.
From the main series, yes, not because I wouldn't count Fate or Fate Last Order.
Even what's her name was a bit of a disappointment.
Last Order, I don't really include that because that's basically you only have one master because the rest of the masters technically died, so you're just one guy, so it's not really. But if we're going to talk about actually series that have those kind of different masters, you have the original series that, technically you don't know it until the third route. You think in the first two routes, the master is technically Shinji. Apparently it's Sakura. At the end of the, in the third route, you discover that it actually was Sakura all the time. And Shinji just kind of used her. And then in the second story that we see, not technically the second story, technically before the story of Fate Stay Night is... I forgot the name of him that technically take the name of like Lord Lloyd II something. He takes the name of like the Guise of Lancer. I forgot the name of him. That technically was his teacher and died.
Yeah.
And he become him instead and become the brother of the little sister, which also was a cool series. I like that a lot. Didn't really involve...
The fact that you forgot the name...
I forget his name because I don't really just follow Fate that much. But he was a cool character. It wasn't really good, but he was a cool character.
But the fact that you forgot his name... No, I want to say something. The fact that you forgot his name is a very telling thing, in my opinion, that the writer masters have always been kind of forgetful because they've always just felt like they're just there.
I can definitely see that. He had a really, really cool arc, and I just really, really feel bad for forgetting his name because he had such a cool growing arc, and also the respect that he got from Gilgamesh at the end was amazing. Like, it just felt like such an amazing arc.
Yeah, Gilgamesh is pretty cool.
Like, we're talking about Gilgamesh later, but like, in the case of writers, like, Gilgamesh, like, respected his servant, and also respected him as a master, even though he's looked at him as a wimp at the start. Just to let you know that he did respect him. Not that much for his level of Gilgamesh, but for the level of Gilgamesh, he did respect him. So I would say that about that. Also, the last master of a writer that I remember, and you don't believe it, but it's actually this time was an actual master, even though in the original he wasn't a master, and that's actually in the lasting core, at least in the series, that was Shinji once again. A master of a writer, I believe.
Ugh.
He was a different Shinji, not the same Shinji. Still annoying, but a different Shinji. So you can't call him as much of like a pervert, disgusting person.
To any of our listeners who don't know who Shinji is, I recommend to not look him up. Let's put it this way: he is the Andrew Tate of Fate. Actually, he's worse than Andrew Tate. But that's...
He's a character that we love to hate, and he's written very well to be an ass. He's a very well...
No, we love to hate him.
We love to hate him, and he's written very well to be a bad character. Like, he's written very well to be, like, the worst of the worst.
Correct. if we speak
And even
if
in
we speak
baseline.
fondly of
Hmm.
him, it. I just want to make something very clear. If we speak fondly of him, it's not as the character; it's how the writer of Fate wrote him in is very fun to hate, and we find that to be a very good thing to have a character that's fun to hate, and you have no problem hating him.
Oh yeah, Shinji is an interesting topic, let's just say, and also done really really well in the Abridged series even more. I think like they given him even more of like a depth of like a annoying
The
character.
abridged, yeah, but we don't. We're not going to get to the abridged series quite
Yeah,
yet.
because it's not
We'll
really.
get to the abridged.
Maybe one
We'll get
day,
there.
not today. I think that's the point.
All right.
Anyway,
So the next. So the next. So okay. Are we ready for the next
you
one?
said something about you want to talk about King
The
Arthur or
next class
Toria.
that I'd like to bring up.
Didn't you want to talk about her before, or you just wanted to mention she's kind of like a vanilla character?
Not yet. Not.
Okay,
I
sure.
wanted to mention her as a vanilla character beforehand, but right now I want to talk about the second class, and this class I actually really like.
Hmm.
I think it is. I think it is like overshadowed by other classes because once again, it's actually a little bit flashy, but it's not like
Hmm.
light flashy, and you'll understand what I mean. The next class I'd like to mention is the caster class. The caster class is actually one of the more interesting
Yeah.
classes. It is usually represented in Fate, at least in the anime, by media, and I always found that to be very telling because
What do you mean
would you
by
like? Do you want to say
media?
anything about the caster
What do you mean
class?
by media?
Media, the media. You don't know who media is?
Oh, you're talking about
Media,
the
the witch
original.
of
You're talking
betrayal.
about the original one. There's also another one from Zero, which we'll talk about him as well. But yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but
Let's just say she was the best caster by far. Like, don't get me wrong, I like different kinds of casters and I seen cool casters, but she's a very interesting caster. Let's just say that. By far, one of the most interesting casters. I would say this, like, just to throw it out there, I do think the servants from the original show are better than the servants from the Zero show. Some of them, of course, at least. But the masters of the Zero show are definitely better than the original show by far. And that is also just
and to be
like,
honest, and to and to be honest, a lot of the allure of all these shows is actually the masters more than the servants.
yeah.
But the servants, in many times, can overtake the allure from the masters in the show
In the
easily.
case of Caster,
Like
for example, media.
like everybody loves Gilgamesh,
Hmm.
for example.
In the case of media, for example, as you mentioned her, she does overshadow her master, but there is a reason why she overshadows her master. It's not like she overshadows her master
Yes,
because she's so much better than him. No, she just a different. She's a character that like basically was summoned by another master, and that master was, let's be honest, not the best person in the world. Still had like
Shinji
Shinji
like.
like, but a lot better. Let's be honest. And even then, actually, I wouldn't say he was better than him. Actually, I'm taking it back. He's actually, I think, in the same level of very much not a good character.
Shinji.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, we didn't see an
No,
atrocities as like Shinji, but he's in the same vein of level that maybe a
no.
little bit better.
Ballpark. He's in the same
Yeah,
ballpark.
yeah, in the same
Let's
ballpark.
put it this way.
She was treated very
You,
badly.
you
She basically cut him tied with him because of her noble phantasms that allowing her to break magic. Which, if you don't know what a noble phantasm is, noble phantasm is basically
it's a
the
bankai.
yeah. But for
It's the
anybody who didn't
bankai.
watch Bleach as well, basically it's their ultimate
Oh
attack.
come
That
on! Anybody who didn't watch Bleach,
basically their ultimate
anybody who didn't
attack.
watch Bleach is a
Just give me a
criminal.
second. Basically, their ultimate attack that is related to their mythos. In the case of Media, basically, she's a witch of, I think, kind of like broke magic of some sort. I don't remember her story exactly, but the point is, she have a dagger that break any kind of contract of magic or magic in general, like that just affecting her
I
or
think she
different
can only break
magic
magic. I think
contracts.
she can only break magic if her.
Hmm? If or
It's not okay. I think it's because he was a man.
fair enough.
So the basics. So the basic story is she was the daughter of King Aetes, the niece of Circe, and the granddaughter of sun god Helios. I'm reading here from the Wikipedia, and it says here that her basic story is just a second. Various endings, yeah. So her basic story is that she was abandoned by Jason, and I think I think her heart was broken because of that,
Yeah.
and then she killed all of her children, and nothing good. Let's put it this way, nothing good. And then she was killed for it. And I think it has. I think she's like a man hater. I think that's like her big
Yes and
story. I could
no.
be
I
I could
don't
be
think
wrong, but I
she's a
think I'm right.
maybe a man hater in the legend of the actual story, but I don't really think she's an actual man hater because let's be honest here, she doesn't really hate Shiro for being like a man. She just hates his guts. Let's be honest. She even doesn't really hate him.
Yeah.
She just like find him
No,
hilariously
I don't think she
interesting.
hates him. Doesn't she? Isn't there?
She just hates
Isn't there a
being
story that she
called a
even saves
witch.
him? Or?
She just hate being
Yeah.
called a witch. Let's just say that. Okay, and also to mention her, basically in the first route in the story, on the Fate Stay Night route, you see her, but not that much. You do get to see her, and she is important a little bit, but not that much. In the
For like
Unlimited,
3 episodes.
in Unlimited Blade Works, however, she is basically the main driving force until the final
She's
battle.
there for like half of.
Half of the
Yeah, she's there
season,
for
half
like
of the
half of the
series. Like
series.
she's half of the series. She's kind of like the main boss until Gilgamesh is coming and just
Yeah.
like doing everything. Like I believe, like in the case of what it is, like she.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Spoilers is fine, but like, come on, come on.
I believe no. I believe she's basically also after their like this the last part of the story. Like they're even after like they're kind of like losing everything kind of point. That's where she is. She's still staying for a very long time. Like in the series, I believe she's like in around like 13 episodes. She kind of like the main driving story, if not more. Like just to let you understand how much she's part of the story there.
Oh yeah,
And the third part,
oh yeah. So one
in
of
the third part, just give me the funny moment
yeah.
here because she's not really the main part there because there's another servant there, and that's a whole different story because you need to see that. But the point is, she dies immediately. Nothing more
Oh,
interesting.
every
You
time,
no no
every
no. You
time.
see her in the same episode because you need to see that. You see her in the next in the same. If you count as an episode, not really episode, but like in the movie, I think the first one or the second one, you see her there immediately, and she dies. Just dies. Nothing more. Actually, I think you watched the first and second movie of Heaven's Feel. You didn't watch the last one, I believe, right? You watched both of the first
No,
two.
I did not watch the last one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did,
you watched the first two. Yeah,
but that was a while ago.
yeah, but she dies. She and
Anyways,
Assassin basically dies. It's hilarious.
basically, guess who is a character that can become a caster? William Shakespeare.
Yes, I knew that actually. William Shakespeare is a
I did
caster.
not know that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. The Fate's disappointment show. Right. That's why I remember that maybe there was an actual good writer like master there because Fate Disappointment or Fate Apocrypha because it started really good and ended up in like being very slowly annoying, or should I say just very annoying in general, actually had a really, really good writer master. I think one of them was a good, like they had a really good writer master and it had a really good berserker master. Like one of the writer masters
All right.
was actually the main character. I mean, he wasn't the most
All right. So the
interesting, but he
next
was
class.
a writer master, basically.
All right. You ready for the next class?
Okay.
The next class I'd like to bring up is a class that I think is trying not to be flashy, and by not being flashy, it is more flashy than any other class, and that is the class of the assassin. Now, if
Oh
you've ever
yeah.
played any game, any RPG style game, you'll know that the assassin is one of the most important and, in many cases, overpowered classes of any game or any
I
piece
mean,
of
it
media.
has to be
Now,
because that's the point of the assassin. You need to just disarm or take care of the target quickly so your allies can actually do things. Now, granted, you sometimes will die, and that's the high risk of it, but it need to be high risk, high reward, basically.
it's like from Lord Farquaad in Shrek One. Some of you may die, but that is a risk I am willing to take.
Oh my god! But the point
So
is, assassins that we had were the one with 100
Kojiro, Kojiro,
Kojiro.
I, him I actually do remember. He is. He's in many of he's in Unlimited Blade Works. I don't remember if he's also in Stay Night. I
Is
don't
the
think
guy
he's in Zero. I think
that stays on the stairs. That one.
yeah,
He is in Stay
yeah.
Night. He is in Stay Night because he's also kind of having the same fight with Saber, but a little bit different.
Oh
That's
yeah.
kind of like his main thing. Like
Stay.
Assassin
I kind
in
of
this particular show wasn't really that good. Then you have the Assassin that we had in Zero that was more utility used by Kiritsugu. Not Kiritsugu,
all
Kira
right.
Kotomine, sorry. I'm always mixing their names because they're
Kirito.
so similar. But Kiritsugu is technically the good guy, but not really a good guy in that show. And Kira Kotomine is the good guy that started like a good, but then becomes evil at the end. It's very weird. That show is amazing by itself, but regardless, point is, assassin is really used well in there. And then I don't remember what the assassin was in Apocrypha or what it called or extra lasting core. Basically, I don't remember those assassins, but I remember at least the that assassin to be really good and utilized. Let's just say it's a very underrepresented assassin as well.
Is there any like character quirk or anything like that that is a prerequisite to actually be a assassin, or it's just like, oh, he's a person who killed a lot of people.
Oh no, it's not really that. There is prerequisition. For example, Kiritsugu actually become heroic spirit Emiya technically in a version of like an assassin version of himself, which is like Kiritsugu being an assassin because that's what he's good at. He's an assassin.
Right.
He's kind of like what he
I
is.
sort of I sort of remember hearing about this.
Basic,
Yeah.
yeah, he's kind of
I think he was like overpowered in that in like that piece of media, right?
maybe I didn't play the game, but maybe. But he has the same skin palette as heroic spirit Emiya and everything. Like he just looks like Kiritsugu. But just talking about assassin, basically, at least from what I'm gleaning from this, is a character that just like sticks to the shadows, kill from behind, doesn't really do things honorably. It's a character that just like use dirty tactics. Let's just say that. It feels like more a character
Oh,
that should just
yeah.
use dirty tactics than anything. Like assassin is just not like a saber. It makes a lot more sense. Even though it can be a saber or an archer, no, it doesn't really fight head on. That's kind of like the main thing of it.
Okay.
I think that's the point.
Do you remember anything? Do you remember anything in Heaven's not Heaven's Feel in what's it called in Grand Carnival? Do you remember the assassin in Grand Carnival or not
I
that
mean, the
much?
Grand Carnival assassin is basically the assassin of Fate Stay Night. It's the same one. They're using the characters from Fate Stay
Really?
Night. That's the point.
I don't remember. I don't remember it that well. I remember. Okay, yeah. You're right. You're right. No, there was one I think changed. No, there was a change. I'm just
Maybe
trying to
they did
remember which one it
show
was.
the other assassin, but not really. Remember that. Regardless, the point is that assassin is really not that represented well in the two shows that I remember, which are Zero um, and Fate Stay Night, all of them. But he is used well in Zero for the most part. Like he is being used well
Okay.
there for the point of what he tries
Okay.
to do.
So the next class that I'd like to talk about is a class that I can't say it's necessarily my favorite, but the person, but a lot of the main character who is usually represented in the anime is usually a character that I happen to like a lot, and that is of course the Lancer class.
No, Lancer.
Now,
Lancer is lovely. I love Lancers.
Lancer is sometimes it's neglected because you think about him as just a guy with a spear,
Hmm.
but you need to remember something. He's a guy with a spear who can kill you. You should
Yes.
not underestimate him ever. He in the anime he has a lot of a lot of powerful attacks. He definitely develops a great personality. That's someone who you actually want to like. Out of actually all the servants, the Lancer servant as a personality is probably my favorite.
I mean, Lancers in
Uh,
general are kind of like not exactly, you know what I mean? What is it called? Lancers in general are like not. How should I say this? How should I say this? God, I'm trying to think about this. Like Lancers are like the one of the main classes of like the three that I mentioned, the high hierarchy classes, but they're always the underappreciated out of the three. They're always just like very underrepresented when it comes to that.
oh,
And
absolutely. I mean, you have so many
also,
good. You have
mhm.
yeah.
No, continue your thought, then I'll just add something at the end because I just open up the
Okay, I
Apocrypha
was going
page.
to say the Lancer that is probably the most famous one. His name is Chu Chulian. He is he's basically the guy who you meet very early on, who has obviously the spear or the lance. He usually wears blue, and at first he
Yeah,
comes off a bit dickish, but you know, from as the episodes go on, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4, I actually learned to like him a lot.
and
And
also
one of the
it
things
makes
that,
sense why he did what he did in the first, episodes
yeah,
of killing Shiro. Also, he wasn't a dick about that. He was just like, sorry, sorry, dude. It's just I have to kill you because that's the
it's a little
rules.
dickish. Come on.
It is a little dickish, but you have to understand they have to kind of like keep secrecy. That's kind of like the point.
I'm not saying you're
Humans,
wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong, but you can't say I'm not wrong either.
yeah, but you have to also remember that when he killed him, he didn't really kill him for fun. He killed him, and kind of like commended him for actually going this far. And when he killed
Trying to
him,
live.
yeah, trying to live. And when he killed him, he just killed him in just very tried to kill him like as quickly and less miserable as possible. Like he just tried to do it as much as easily and just he will not suffer as possible. It didn't really look that way, but you definitely can see that intention. Like he even say that like he's sorry that that happened and he's sorry that like he's just like it was the wrong night for him to be there, basically.
Oh yeah, for sure, for
So
sure.
you can
Now, one
see
of the
that he's not
things.
an ass.
What was his noble phantasm again?
I don't remember. I think it's like something. I forgot what the
Like the
name of it.
spear? Is it like the spear that can go through anything or something
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that?
something like that. I don't remember what like exactly what its name, but yeah, it's a spirit that goes through anything. Also,
Yeah.
we also have a very like the one from Fate Zero was also kind of like in the same style but less important. I think he was cool but not as cool as that one. And like don't get me wrong, I don't hate that the Fate Zero Lancer, and he did play a very
Oh no,
interesting
I like him.
role.
I like him
He
too.
played a very interesting role, and I think he was the
Yeah.
second servant to die there. I don't remember. Like the way he died was also just very dishonorable, which was also very interesting. The second or the third one to die. I think it was the third one. Point is, he was a very interesting character. Like not because he was like an interesting, but like for the dynamic and the things that he added to the story, basically because of his fight, and he was honorable in everything. And I believe his noble phantasm was something like that. He's like he had two lances, and one of them kind of like administered poison, and the other one I don't remember what it did, but it was something of that nature. I don't remember exactly, but he was really really cool as well. I didn't like him as
There's something, yeah.
yeah that one from State Knight, but I did like him as well. Also, very, very interesting. Do you want to know who were the Apocrypha versions of the Lancer? Because there were two Lancers, one of black and one of red. Because,
Okay, yeah. Go, 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 go.
yeah,
Yeah.
the one for Lancer of black was really, really cool and was a very important part of the first part of the story. It was Vlad the Third, basically Dracula.
Oh, wow.
And the one
Dracula.
and the one
Wait,
for Mhm.
we have vampires in Faith.
He technically wasn't a vampire in the first part that, when you see him, he was a very honorable man. But when he was forced to become a vampire, like against his will, he did become a vampire. Like he didn't choose to do that. It's kind of
Hmm.
like not exactly a vampire, but it is a vampire. It's kind of like a
No, no,
weird
no.
thing.
Then it's a vampire. It's a
Yeah, and
vampire.
also just to mention it, the Fate universe, or should I say the Natsu universe, does have vampires, kind of.
Oh, that's
It's a
interesting.
different
Vampire,
kind of
because
vampires.
vampires also sometimes means werewolves, and werewolves sometimes mean moon stuff, and moon stuff is basically big in Fate, so it all like
It's
can tie
not
up
exactly
sometimes.
a thing like that. It's something called Tsukihime. I believe the story of that. It's
Yeah.
something else. It is related in the same
Uh,
universe, but it's not like they're not doing things together. Let's just say that, except
shucks, shucks.
From Carnival Phantasm, of course. Word comes to the Lancer of, Red is actually a very important one. That was Achilles.
Mm. Achilles, yeah.
Achilles was
Uh,
really
b-
cool. Like in that show, I did really like Achilles. Achilles was great in that show. Like he was
oh,
awesome.
Achilles was a lancer.
Yeah. No, 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 no. Sorry, not Achilles. Achilles was the rider. That's why I remember the name.
Right.
He
Yeah.
was an
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome
Yeah.
rider.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, that
Lancer
makes a
of
lot of
Red
sense.
was Karma, which was also amazing. I'm confusing between the two. Karma is the son of is basically the son
Yeah, that I remember. That I
of
remember.
the sun god. And he was really, really cool, and he kind of like fought the main character because that's kind of like was their thing.
Yeah,
And the
Karna.
Karna, yes, Karna, and he was really cool. And the writer, this was a cool writer. Let's just say that the writer of Red was a really cool writer during that story.
Yeah.
The servants were really cool. The stories weren't the best, but the servants were cool. The writer of Black was a Stoffel, which was part of the main character, so that's why I mentioned like he was a main character technically in that story, which is pretty cool. And the casters were also pretty interesting. You mentioned already Shakespeare, but the other caster is actually very interesting because you're probably going to be very surprised by this. It was Shlomo ibn Gevirol, also Avi
Oh,
Hebron.
Evan Gvirol.
Evan Grimaud, yes. That was
Yeah,
the master
big.
of
Yeah, I know who
golems.
that is.
We know who that is,
Yeah, we know who that is.
without getting into
He
detail.
was, without getting into too much detail, Evan Gvirol was a poet from,
From
I
Jewish
want to
culture.
say, 1,000 years
Hmm.
ago.
And it's pretty
Thousand.
interesting. Yeah, 1,000 years
Yeah.
ago. And it's pretty interesting that most of the time the Jewish culture related servants or Israelis or whatever you like to call them, I think they're more related to Jewish than Israelis, are either lancers or not lancers, are either archers or casters. Nothing else. We technically only have three, but nothing else of that nature. You have Shlomo, which is
Yeah,
Solomon, which
Solomon.
is
King Solomon.
Grand Caster. I really like they gave him that respect of Grand Caster. And then you have his father, which is an archer, and then Evan
David.
Gevirol, which is also a caster.
Yeah, okay. So the next class I'd like to bring up is a class that is very much beloved by everyone, and it is the Archer class.
Archer, I wouldn't
Everybody loves it.
say it's my
I,
favorite, but I do like it a lot. Like at least from
I didn't say
mhm.
I didn't say it's the most beloved. I said it is very much
Yeah,
beloved.
I would say this from the top three classes. Like I mentioned, the stronger classes, but not really. It's is my favorite. I like it a lot. Like from those three because it just think about it. An archer that is able to fight on the battlefield head face to face with a guy that uses a sword and still able to win is super cool.
Yeah, so one of the things that bothered me about the archer class, just one,
They're not really
is
archers.
they're no, yeah, yeah. Like you mentioned before, one of the more famous archers is of course King David.
Yeah,
Now,
and
I don't know if you guys know this, but in Fate, in the original lore, King David is a redhead.
yes, there. Let's just not enter into that.
You know where I'm going with
Yes, I
this. You know
know.
where I'm going
Actually,
with
it's
this.
not exactly a redhead if you're looking into more into detail. It's basically just says redhead is beautiful, but that's a whole different topic if we're entering into that lore as well. Point is, I'm not entering into his design because I do know anime
He did
changed
not
that.
have
I don't
he did
bother
not
with
have
that.
green hair. He did not have green hair.
But also, some of the character didn't have a purple hair or a blue hair or things of that nature. I don't enter into that design that much. I definitely see that, and I definitely understand that it's very annoying. And we wanted him to be represented a little bit better, and also with better clothes. I didn't really like his design of the way that he looks in his clothes. But that's not what I'm complaining about. The thing that I'm complaining about is that moment of David and Goliath. I understand it's a very big moment, but if you read the Bible through the entire thing, you could understand that King David is more of a saber class. Okay, he's not an archer class; he's more of a saber class because he has
Oh, for
a
sure.
lot of things related to swords. Not to mention the fact that he basically killed Goliath with a sword at the end. He didn't kill
Right.
Goliath with the stone.
I think the stone more stunned him than
Yeah.
killed him, if I
Not to
remember
mention the fact that there
correctly.
are a lot of mentions in the Bible as well that he will live on his sword, and kind of a lot of things of when he kill people, if even, is with a sword, not
Right.
with an archery weapon or some
So the
sort.
other, so there's a lot. So in Fate specifically, there's a lot to explore in the Archer class. I'd argue that even from all the servants, Archer is the class that Fate has to explore the
Oh
most.
yeah,
Now, Fate has three incredible servants that I'd like to mention. The first one is going to be Emia.
heroic spirit
Now,
Emiya, obviously. If you didn't mention him, that would be criminal.
that it would absolutely be criminal. The second one that I'd like to mention is, of course, Robin Hood, because
Robin Hood.
I Robin Hood is the most classic archer in all of lore history. And the third one is,
Hmm.
of course, going to be. Can you guess who?
Gilgamesh.
There we go.
But there's
And that's
also a
one who I.
few that I would like to add as well, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
The one that I would like to add from Fate Apocrypha, because I don't really care about Fate Lasting Core that much. Apocrypha still at least had something going for it. The one for
Okay.
there were two archers in that story. The archers that we had basically what it called. Uh, Basically Chiron, which was the archer, the mentor of the Greek heroes, and we also have
Okay.
Atalante, which was the huntress of charity, which are also related to Greek mythology, which were also pretty interesting characters as well in terms of the stories of what they were.
Remind me, was if Robin Hood was an obvious archer, then of course William Tell would also be, right?
I think
I
so.
think so.
Also, Robin Hood was, I think, the archer in Fate Lasting Core. I believe so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
Atalante, just to throw it out there, Atalante had a really interesting story for her that she's kind of related to orphan children, and she doesn't really like to kill children. And when technically Ryder had to kill a child, not Ryder, Ruler, which was John Dark, had to kill a child, which basically was Jack the Ripper, which was a very interesting assassin. Which I forgot to mention the assassins, but yeah, she was a very
We can mention them whenever we want.
yeah, we had Jack the Ripper, and we also have Ceramis as other assassins that I didn't really mention because I forgot about them. Which Ceramis was a very main one, and Jack the Ripper was also a main one as well in the story because it was the main driving force for the a little bit of the start of the story. Again, just like the caster in Zero, that everybody kind of united to kill him or just deal with it because it was a character that was a problem. So they did unite against that. Same idea. But basically, Atalante kind of just hated Ruler, which was John Dark, when they kind of just led to the death of Jack the Ripper, because it was technically a child, even though a child killer in that story. But yeah, and then she kind of like was interesting in that regard. Not whole a lot, but that's kind of what her thing. And then Kayron, which you know who that is from the Percy Jackson's books and everything. He was also he was a mentor character, so he was very interesting. But they didn't really come close to Gilgamesh and heroic spirit Amiya. Let's just say that.
Okay, let me tell you something. And now that we're in the archer class, I'd like to say this. If I could choose any hero of any class, I would choose Gilgamesh as an archer.
Even though Gilgamesh is not really an archer, but sure.
But here's the thing. One of Gilgamesh's biggest one of Gilgamesh's biggest antis is Emiya, and Emiya as an archer is very powerful. If Gilgamesh is the archer, then the Emiya archer isn't a threat. Number one. Number two, I'm kind of hoping that Gilgamesh as an archer wouldn't have much of an ego, or at least wouldn't have much less ego. Because let's be honest, Gilgamesh without an ego is probably, doesn't matter in which class, is probably the most overpowered character you can have. If I have an egoless Gilgamesh, I'm winning
Oh yeah.
100% of the time.
But Gilgamesh is technically considered as an archer. Let's just be saying that he is an archer technically in the story. But one thing I would say about this is just he's very, like you said, have a very high ego. So that's actually make him quite interesting when it comes to that.
Okay. The next class I'd like to bring up is a class that I hold dear to my heart. It is a class that I have spoken about many times before with a lot of my friends, and that is the Berserker class.
Interesting
And
choice.
the Berserker, I chose the Berserker class because, and I'm going to bring this up in a few minutes. And now, one of the things that I'd like to say about the Berserker class is all of the characters that have ever been, called a Berserker, which you have Hercules, Lancelot, you have Spartacus, you have Asterios, etc. One of the things in the lore that actually is a prerequisite to become a Berserker is, of course, the whole thing that they actually in their story they lost their minds. They went crazy.
You have Hercules,
And
for example.
Hercules, for example, lost his mind.
You have
That is
yeah. That is,
yeah, you have so many. You know what? Let's delve in. For the record, for all of our viewers, Hercules, the actual story of Hercules is has nothing to do with the cute show that we saw in Disney. The movies from Disney are
or
so
things
cute.
of that nature that are kind of like more close to the source material that actually have the things, but still related, trying to kind of like put it in the children's medium. For the kids, basically, as they say, for the kids. But yeah, that's kind of like the point. It was for kids. It has nothing to do with that as well. It's a lot darker. Let's just say that.
Like it's a lot darker. Now in the shows, I don't remember if the games follow the show correct, to a T.
For the most
But
part.
for the most part, yes. But the Berserker is always attached to what's her name, the homunculus, Emilia.
Not a million.
What was her
What's her
name?
name?
She had a name.
Forgot her name.
Hold on.
I forgot her name. You made me forget her name.
No, I get it.
We have a show about her. You have a show about her. Prisma Ilia.
Ilia, right? Ilia.
How did you make me forget about
Yeah.
Ilia?
It's your fault.
Oh, sure, it's my fault. Always my fault.
Yes. So there's a character in the Bible who I always thought would be good enough for to be a berserker, and I'll tell you who this is and why. So there's a character called Samson, or Samson, who was who was very big in the Bible, who walked around. He basically tore a lion in half, and
I
all of his
mean, he did
power
lose
came
his
from his
mind.
hair.
Yeah, he did lose his
He
mind.
did lose his mind in the end when
Kind
his
of,
eyes were
yeah.
plucked out.
And also, he could make
Well,
a very interesting writer servant as well, but that's a whole story that is kind of a little bit more of a stretch compared to being a berserker.
but I think he would fit the bill. He was very, very strong.
Hmm.
Uh, they say that he made clothes out of lion hide that he tore apart. Where the story is, he took a lion and he tore the lion apart from the mouth, and out of the lion
Hmm.
came a beehive, and he fed the kids of a town with the honey that came from that beehive.
And
Something
also, he
something
had the
something
thing
like
that he
insane like that.
killed.
Well, yeah, the
Yeah.
strength that came from his
And he
hair.
also
Now,
killed
if
an
you've ever
entire,
heard
like,
of Hey There,
fallen soldier
Delilah,
with, what is
so
it called? I
Delilah
forgot the
was the
name of
woman that he
that.
loved that cut his hair in
With
order to
like
make
a
him
chin of
weak.
a donkey, I believe.
And
So,
I think that he would be a incredible,
oh
a
yeah.
really good berserker.
Yeah. You remember the story where he killed 1,000 people with a chin of a donkey?
Yeah.
Oh God, he would create an interesting that if we're talking about that actually for a second, for the class that we're past, I do have an idea already for an assassin at least, but I do not know who could be a very interesting lancer. Like this is the only one that we don't really know.
Lancer.
Rider also could be a very interesting one,
Lancer.
but Lancer is a lot easier actually, and it's kind of funny because I'm going to say Joseph because Joseph technically did become the hand of the king, and he was a rider technically, and has his own his own entourage and
Technically,
chariots.
you're right. Yeah.
So
Who would be who would be a good archer? Not archer, lancer. Who would be a good lancer? Who would be a good lancer? Moses.
Moses, would it be more?
Yeah, he had the staff. He had
I
the staff.
mean, that would make more sense to be Joshua, but I think maybe you have a point there. No, wait. No. I have a better idea.
No, you're not
Pinhas.
saying okay.
Pinhas.
If it's with Pinchas,
Don't you
maybe.
remember? He basically stabbed him with a lance. He stabbed the head
You're
of.
right.
He stabbed both of of those with a lance.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. And he ended Bilam's shtick.
Yeah. How can I forget
Yeah, I
about
know what you're talking
Pinhas?
about. I mean, we have options. We have options.
But yeah, that's a good one. And for Assassin, say to me if you agree with me. How about Ehud ben Gera, which basically killed the king of Moab?
Uh,
That's a good assassin, technically.
I guess. I guess because the whole point is that wasn't he like overweight to the point that he didn't feel that he got stabbed.
That's also, but also because of the fact that he was left-sided, so he was able to sneak a weapon because he
Yeah,
only
weapon.
checked him on the right side for some stupid, oh, I should say on the left side for some stupid reason because you carry your weapon in your opposite side. So he put his weapon on the right, and they checked him on the left, and that's it. And it was very rare as an idea, even like to think that a person will be left-handed. So that's what's extra interesting about that. And he was able to cover up everything, and yeah, everyone just was able to get away from it. So a good assassin he would make. But back to the topic again.
Back to the topic again. I'd like. I think that's all I have to say about Berserker.
I mean, there is also Hercules was interesting. We also had in Zero, I believe
The
that
whole,
was
the whole. Okay,
Siegfried.
okay. No. I'd like to talk a little bit more about Berserker, or to be more specific, I'd like to talk about the Berserker master, Ilya. Now, Ilya was one of the most interesting characters, even though she was a homunculus, and she
Also,
wasn't even a she wasn't even a real homunculus.
and
She was
also,
like a half. She was a half homunculus.
mhm,
No.
she was kind of a half a homunculus, but she still had a very short lifespan and everything. Also, most of the time, the masters of the berserkers are actually very interesting because they have to deal with someone that is very angry. Because in Apocrypha, we had the master of berserker was the master of Frankenstein, which of course was turned into a cute anime girl. But the point is, it was still a very interesting dynamic between the two. It wasn't like, boring. It was like a girl that didn't talk and was very angry and all that stuff. It was interesting. But I think the master of Berserker that suffered the most was the master that was the cousin, not the cousin, but like technically the uncle, but not really the uncle of Sakura, from the Mato clan, with the worms and everything. He was very interesting in that regard and like what he chose to do.
Yeah, berserkers are really hard to control.
Yeah, and his berserker was Siegfried, which was also very interesting and traumatic for Saber, which also affect her, I believe, in the fifth one. Although technically she didn't really show any things from the fifth one, but technically I believe she does remember things from the fourth one that affect her on the fifth one. From Zero that affect from Stay Night. But you don't really see that like kind of represented that much. It just I believe in the anime it's a little bit more said, but not really, because in the anime like we already know the medium that what we're working with. So that's why it's kind of just worked like that.
Okay, and of course, the last and not least, the most obvious class to talk about that we've mentioned a couple of times, but still we have to mention this class last, is of course going to be
Saber.
drumrolls, the Saber class. Now, the Saber class is a class that is defined by characters in history who have used
A sword.
a sword.
Pretty simple and self-explanatory.
And like I said before, if you have the hankering to see King Arthur as as a cute anime waifu, this is the one for you. Because how many times have they redone King Arthur as Saber? They must have redone him like at least 5 or 6
Uh,
times.
you have the two times for the original. You have
Yep.
the Dark Saber technically in the third variation of that one.
Yep.
You have the fourth variation
Siegfried
again from Zero,
and
technically.
Siegfried, and that's pretty much it. No, I'm
Siegfried
kidding.
is.
There's got to be more.
There are a lot more. Siegfried was technically also the Saber of Black that technically gave his power for Homunculus, just to give him that
Right.
power. You have also the daughter, but technically son of King Arthur, that technically wasn't really like. Again, just like King Arthur, like to be called by a
Oh, right,
male,
right, right. And there's also
Mordred.
Frankenstein. There's also
There is more. No,
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein was a berserker. Mordred. I'm talking about Mordred.
Mm,
And then we also had
oh,
what's her
yeah, yeah, yeah,
name?
you're right.
You had Mordred, which was technically Red Saber, but wasn't really the first Red Saber that we seen on screen, because the
Wait,
first
let me
Red
check
Saber
this up.
we seen on screen was basically almost looked like Saber
No, no,
exactly.
Frankenstein was also a saber.
Maybe another variation of Frankenstein, but Frankenstein I'm talking from Apocrypha was a berserker. Maybe a different kind of version. Like
So
like I said,
basically,
there are a lot of like if you're talking about the games,
there are a
there
lot
are a
of
lot of like
versions.
different
Yeah.
variations. But from
Uh,
the show Mordred
yeah,
was the
you're right.
berserker. Not to mention the fact that
Yeah.
we also had the other thing that we had technically almost a reskin of the original Saber in red with a little bit more of a revealing dress and everything that called I don't remember what her name was.
Narrow.
Nero
Narrow,
Red
right?
Saber basically, yes. We had her. And also who the last one that I remember, we had Siegfried, we had her, we had that, and there was another one that I don't remember from the top of my head that was very interesting as well. Maybe it's from already the order and all stuff of that nature. But point is, these are
Yeah, I can see
sabers,
that.
and I wouldn't say that sabers are boring because they're really not. Like they're not boring characters.
They have technically the most powerful attack as a noble
I
phantasm.
wouldn't
That is
say they
true,
necessarily had the
but
most powerful attack because some of them maybe don't really have the most powerful attack. It's just not really
but
as straightforward as you might think with that.
correct, but no, but I was about to give a bit, but it all feels like it was like really written that way, that it's like sabers are favored, you know.
I mean, most of the time, the sabers are the main characters of the story, or at least like the original stories, like the original Fate. The saber is the main character in the first route, technically. In Zero, the main character, technically from the servants, is again the saber. Same goes for Fate Last in Core, is technically against the saber. In, of course, again, also Apocrypha, the main one is the saber because the saber gave the power, or should say, the life to the character that was on a homunculus and gave it life. So technically, again, a saber was given to the main character. But in the other routes of Fate, the main character actually from those routes is like in Unlimited Blade Work is actually Archer, and in Heaven's Feel it's technically Rider, even though technically they're not really the main thing, but they're still the main servant there. I don't know how to define that the best.
Okay. So after we've given this very, 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 very long introduction to the servants, and we went into like deep detail about each one, if you had to choose any class, you don't get to choose who the character is, but any class. Which class would you choose? Like to be your servant?
I mean, you said Berserker, right? Like that's will be yours, right?
No, that's not what I said.
But you said you really favor Berserkers.
No, I didn't say I favor. I said I really like Berserker, and I still do really like. I like them all, but
I
like
also
Berserker
like
has
them
always been
all.
like.
But if I'm actually have to choose and be
Okay,
honest, like Archer is cool
I'll
and
tell you who
everything.
I would choose.
Okay, tell yours.
I'll go first. Archer.
With who? Archer? Interesting. Okay. I was going to go
I
with
said
Archer, but
archers.
like
Archer.
yeah, I like archers a lot, but I actually like to go with different things that are a lot more interesting. I think I'm more of like a guy that like to maybe use some of like the side utility characters because I do like the utility of different
Okay,
kind
so
of like
assassin.
classing.
So you're
For
gonna go for
example,
assassin.
assassin or a caster, I like those a lot. Like I really like the assassin because it can be basically anything, just not as good, but have utility as crazy. And also because
Assassin
I
and
think
archer are very. I'm going to
mhm,
be honest. Assassin and archer are very interchangeable. They have a lot
yeah.
like in common.
Also, I do will also like to take an assassin because, like I said, I think out of the classes, it's the most underrepresented out of all of them in the entire show. Even though we have good assassins in some of the other shows, but it's so underrepresented compared to everything. Like so underrepresented. Like Berserkers, you remember Hercules.
Yeah,
Rider,
yeah,
you
yeah.
remember
I can definitely
Medusa and
see
all that
that.
stuff. Caster, you remember a caster.
Media. You remember media?
Media, right?
Uh,
Lancer
Caster. Remember
were
media? Lancer. You
we
remember Chu? You remember what's his name? Chu, right?
I already remember
Yeah,
from
his name is
Lancer
Chu.
already, even if it's not a main character, I already remember that Dracula was a Lancer, okay? That's already something that I remember. So that already shows you that I remember even
Right.
the most obscure of Lancers. Archer,
Archer. There's
so
so many
many.
archers to remember.
Saber as well. It just like, but Assassin is always just like,
With sabers,
mm,
assassin is always like not like everyone kind of forgets, but it's super cool. I
oh yeah.
completely agree with you.
I think it's
And
just something that
how
I
many
really
of
like.
okay? Let me ask you a different question now. Something completely different. How many of how many of the Fate animes have you watched?
I think
Because
all
I've
of
watched
them.
three and a bit.
I think
Uh,
all of them for the
all of
most
them.
part.
I do need to. I do need to catch up.
I did
Here's the
watch
thing
all of
to all the
them.
listeners and all the viewers.
Hmm.
Okay, here's the thing to all the listeners and all the viewers. If you liked JoJo, which by the way, everybody should like JoJo because JoJo is very incredible.
Awesome.
I think that you should also get into Fate. I think Fate has a lot to offer, and it has a lot more diverse ways to watch to
Hmm.
watch. Because a lot of the things that make a lot of shows interesting, at least in my humble opinion, is that when you watch a show, you watch it once, you get a little bit, you get like a good feeling of how you feel towards that show, and then when you watch it again a couple of years later, you have a completely different feeling towards it because you have matured as a person and as a consumer of media, and you suddenly start viewing things as differently. Now, one thing that makes Fate very interesting, in my opinion, is that you can consume different variants of Fate at the same time and get different aspects of it and enjoy it very
Oh
much
yeah.
so. Because I watched at the same time when I started watching the Fate series 4 years ago, I watched Stay Night and I watched Unlimited Blade Works. Now, don't learn from me. Watch it in. I think there's a better option to watch it, but that's how I watched it, and I enjoyed it a lot. I watched Grand Carnival. I watched the
Zero
first
as
two
well.
movies. I watched Zero, but Zero is not a reskin of the series. You know what I mean? It's an incredible story in and of itself,
Also,
and
um,
every single time, yeah.
Also, speaking about that, just to mention in this about the different flavors and everything, this is not like JoJo of like different kind of like high energy and levels and everything like oh my god and things of that nature. No, it's a lot more calmer, but it still has cool fights, cool characters, and cool ideas. It's just doing it a little bit differently, but you could just enjoy it all the same.
The reason why I mentioned JoJo is simply because something that JoJo has that's going for it is the fact that A, there's a lot to watch of it, and B, there's a lot when you consume it, you feel something very very different every time you watch it, and I feel like something like that actually applies for Fate too, if not better for Fate. I think I'd actually argue that Fate is better than JoJo. Sorry to all you JoJo stans, but
Fair enough.
JoJo isn't the best thing out there, even though it's incredible. JoJo is
Fair
very
enough.
incredible. Yeah. So, to anyone who's watching who wants to watch it and get into it because you got this far in, I'd recommend to start with that. If you're looking to get into the franchise, which I highly recommend, start with Fate Stay Night and watch that until the end. And after you finish Fate Stay Night, you go into the forums and not ask, but look into what people say to watch. I'd recommend to watch afterwards
Hmm.
Unlimited Blade Works because that is just the best one of them that's not Zero. And after you finish Unlimited Blade
Hmm.
Works, then watch Fate Zero and then watch Grand Carnival. What do you think?
You could also Okay, I would say this. I do recommend also myself if you want to get the full experience, even though it's not the best. Start with the original Fate Stay Night. It just also will set you the bar because you think like, oh, it's not the best thing in the world, but like it starts really low with that and then it just goes only higher. Like almost all the shows, if not all of them, are better than this. And I would also just like say, watch that. I actually will go if you want to finish the entire route. Watch that, then Unlimited Blade Works, then watch the free movies of Heaven's Feel because they can just like give you the entire like story of that, and then go watch Zero because Zero is very very interesting in that regard, and then just like go consume the other things if you're interested in that as well. They're not as good as those series, in my opinion. Like at least Unlimited Blade Works and Zero, but they're still very very nice. As for the last thing I want to mention as well is that what is your favorite Fate show? Let's be honest here. What is your favorite one?
My favorite Fate show is actually a combination of two shows. It's obviously Unlimited Blade Works and Zero because I think they go like together. But if I had to choose, I'd give it to Zero, but not by much.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that. Zero was amazing compared to everything that I kind of like seen. I definitely think Unlimited Blade Work was also really, really good. But I do think, again, just the main character of that show, which was Kiritsugu Emiya, was so interesting. And the dynamic between Kiritsugu and Kira Kotomine was also really interesting as an overall thing. So that's why I really, really like that show. It's kind of like the main character and rival was a very interesting dynamic. Um, but yeah, bringing it into a close finally of this particular topic, we kind of just jump over the place because that's kind of the entire thing that we do, and we kind of just enjoy talking about the topic. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it
Yep.
for this episode, unless, of course, you have something to add into this particular thing. So, bringing this into a close, basically, this is a topic that we really enjoy to talk about because we do like these particular shows and sometimes talk about them. I know it was over the place, but that's how we like to do things because we like to bring things up as they are, and also we'll just get better at creating podcasts in the future. This is something that we're doing for fun, and honestly, it's just a great time all around for us. But anyway, ending off the show itself, I've been Unfit. This is my friend Unharm. You can look us all in social
Right.
medias in different kind of places. I am Teamndl on my main YouTube channel in YouTube if you're
I'm
looking for Yu-Gi-Oh
unharmed.
stuff, and Unharmed doing his own things as well on his own YouTube channel as well. This is also the YouTube channel for our variety stuff in general of things that we like to do.
In the
Who
description.
knows? Yeah,
That's
in the
right.
description you can look into things that we
I d-
like.
I just posted the other. I just posted the other day a video I'm very happy about.
That's also a thing that he liked to brag about because he
Yeah.
became really good about this. But he actually became a really, really good editor for a very short time that
Yeah.
he's been doing this, compared to me, that I'm just not doing things of that level, but I can get there if I want to. Brag, brag. But regardless
Hopefully,
of
it'll
the.
become better.
Oh,
I'm trying to
sticks
become better.
experience is everything. Um, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
honestly
So all I'd like to
that's pretty
say,
much it.
the only thing I'd like to say at the end is, if you enjoyed it, just leave a like or leave a positive. Don't leave a positive because we can't ask for it on other social medias. But please return because we really enjoy doing this.
Oh yeah, and we're going to become better and essentially learn from our mistakes and essentially also just create more interesting things. Maybe
And
next
and if you
time we'll
have
be a little bit more
and maybe we'll
organized.
even have more guests on.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
guests of
of people that you
maybe
know.
people who you don't know. We might have things in the works. You don't know.
You don't know. Maybe we're going to invite Joe Biden and you have no idea about that.
I'd actually prefer to get George Ryan.
No, I just throw the name of a very important character out there. That figure. God, my head doesn't work in this late of hour. And I don't know why I picked Joe Biden as the first thing, even though he's not our president, even. But regardless of the point, we will do more cool things in the future. For now, this is Unfit, and
This is Unharm,
we're signing out.
and we are out.
Bye bye.
Bye.